Hey, we're back. It's TF with another video in the series of how to tech your Chipley marker. Today we're going to talk about in depth on the hammers that you'll find inside of a Chipley marker, and a few things that you can do to tech those out. I mean, a hammer is kind of a hammer; it's just a chunk of stainless steel. But there are a few things that you can do, or can happen that you might need to adjust while using the marker, especially over the years. What I've got here on the right is an example of a WGP hammer, very standard hammer. I mean, these were mass produced, dimple in the end, by WGP. Used to be in America and then overseas. And they took a lug very similar to the lug that it was in the Chipley, and it was always hard to turn these too when you tighten them up or loosen them. One of the advantages that Chipley has done over the WGP is that they did a better job of cleaning up and rounding off the lug to make for a cleaner release. Also, the specs are a lot tighter on Chipley. It fits in the tube better. In fact, I'll find sometimes when I'm adding a Chipley hammer to a WGP marker that sometimes the Chipleys won't fit. These always fit. I think they were really underboard or undersized, and I think they rattled down the tube, bottom tube, as a result of that, and weren't as good as they could be. But you get what you pay for. You know, these were mass produced to be quite a bit cheaper on the market at the time than a Chipley, and so that's what you get what you pay for. Now, what you're seeing here are the two hammers that are currently produced by Chipley. This is going to be in everything but a half block marker. So SS25, Series 5 Basic, J Squared, Series 5, Series 6, Series 6 Prototype, and the like. Anything that's not half block has this hammer in it. Anything that is half block, the J Squared, excuse me, the T2, sorry, the T2 or the Series 6.5 has this. And what they've done here is that they've added a shield to cover up the slot that is left when you half block a marker. Let me grab one of my half block here and I'll show you what I mean. If you look here on the back side, you can see the slot that's left. The pin has to travel in there to recock the marker. So what they did, instead of having a hammer that would have terminated somewhere around here and left all this open so that dirt and paint and anything else could fall in the back of here, is that they milled this hammer a bit longer so that it had a shield to cover up that slot. That's all that is. It did make the hammer slightly heavier, and they had to change up the spring because of some other changes in the T2. This turned out to be real serendipitous. It turned out to be a good thing because the T2 and it turned out to be a lot more efficient than the Series 6. And again, this is all trade-off, you know. If there was one marker I could own, I'd own just one Series 6. You know, they're just workhorses. They work forever. If I only could own one, that's what I'd own. But the T2 is more efficient and lighter and things like that. But it's a little bit more trick, you know. That slot does leave some opening for dirt to get in there, and just like any, you know, higher end performance, you have to keep it properly maintained or it's not going to work for you. Anyway, what maintenance can you really do on a hammer? Well, you can look at it. Okay, that seems to be kind of done now. It doesn't really do much as you look at it. It kind of sits there, you know. It's like Perry the Platypus. But Perry the Platypus also turns into Agent P. So what goes on with this hammer on the inside? There's actually a few components on the inside that Chipley adds over top of the basic hammer that goes on for the sniper, the old Bud Orr sniper. That was simply you know, that piece and this piece. And what they did to make this pin, make it more difficult to raise and lower so that it didn't vibrate out and change its adjustments, was simply crush some of the threads on the lug so that it was hard to move. And what you found over time is that those threads would correct themselves and get loose, and you'd have to crush them again. And it's got to be the most inelegant solution on the planet, is just crushing some threads, which is, you know, every machinist just cringes even when they hear it. So what Chipley did was the lug goes down here, and then in the back that's threaded for the cocking rod, right? Let me grab a cocking rod and show you what that does. And of course the cocking rod only exists on the non-half blocks. The half blocks have a hole in there, right? But the cocking rod technically fits, but it's not meant for a cocking rod. Okay, it's threaded out in this one to fit a cocking rod, and that's what it should do. But also in there, they use that threading to submerge, and this one's difficult to see because it's fairly clear. Let's see if you can see that guy. To submerge a nylock screw that allowed this nylock screw to keep tension on this lug and stop it from moving. Another thing they did, because some players back in the cocker days, these cocking rods would rotate out through all the use and change, and all of a sudden the gun wouldn't recock, and you start having troubles with this. In the earlier series, some of the guys, the free flow guys in particular, were drilling holes in the sides and putting a nylock set screw on both sides of this. What Chipley did to get rid of that problem was they submerged, and this is actually the bumper that goes on the back of the hammer, they submerged this right back here. And let me zoom in so we can see that if we can. They submerged this piece of Buna and press fitted it inside of here. I don't know if you can see that little black stripe there, to hold this cocking rod in and stop it from being moved, or at least prevent it from being moved. Okay? Now, let me say this. If you use a pick to take one of these out, you can pretty much kiss that goodbye. It's almost impossible to get back in. They have this special tool at Chipley, and my goodness, you're just better off buying a new hammer. But the one thing that you can do is adjust this nylock screw if this lug gets loose on you. But there's a trick to it, okay? It's just like the trick for adjusting the nylock screw in a Phantom. What you don't want to do is just try to reach in the back of there and tighten it down. It's not going to work. What's essentially gone on, once you tighten one of these down, and you saw how easily that one came out, so this could be adjusted, is you're going to try to push this nylock screw, which isn't very tough, and doesn't want to, wants to strip out really easy because it's made of nylon. You're going to try to turn it past these threads, and that's not going to work. What you need to do is take out that lug, and then, this is the only time I'm going to tell you not to do this, don't use a ball end, use a straight Allen key, and give that, maybe an eighth of a turn, okay? And what that'll do is it'll push, and now you can even see what I've done there, it'll push that nylock screw a little bit more into the area where the lug goes in, and then when you tighten that down, it will hit a fresh piece of that nylock screw, that nylon, and get more difficult. About perfect, man. Just good retention, good resistance. And it get a little bit more difficult to screw in, and then you're guaranteed, or virtually guaranteed, that this lug will not release itself. It's exactly the same for the T2 in Series 6.5. As opposed, you don't have this, but you do see in there that little hole that takes that nylon screw, okay? These nylon screws can be had from Chipley. They are not very robust. So if you're going to change them out, if you got one that's really messed up, I'd order like 3 or 4, because you'll probably jack up the first couple just learning how to do this, but they're dirt cheap too, so that's not a problem. But that's about all you really need to do on a hammer, is making sure that this is, difficult. Not, again, you don't need to use the hand of Thor to raise this thing up and down, but if it's just moving very freely, it's probably going to rotate loose in your gun through a full day of play, especially like a scenario or something like that. So definitely adjust that if it needs to be adjusted, okay? So that's about it on the hammer. That gets in depth on that, and that's about all you can do on it besides polish it. And that's it. We'll see you in the next video. All right.